And away we go. It is the Nightcap right here on BearcatJournal.com, brought to you as always by our good friends at Galactic Fried Chicken. Visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com to download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Get it delivered to your front door. Or go to Dayton, Kentucky. Tell them to pump it up. And you will get 15% off of your purchase. All right, Aaron, I know we've gotten away from our preview series.
There's been a lot going on.
There's been a lot going on. We've had a lot to talk about. Thought we did a great show last night that really got people talking about what things are going to look like as the four new teams get into the Big 12. So let's get back to our preview series. I think the only two we have left in football, O-line, D-line. If I'm wrong, if we've done D-line, tell us in the chat. I don't think we have.
TBD.
Yeah, I think we've talked about the D-line in one of the nightcaps, but I don't think we did the full D-line preview. And then I know we've got the center position in basketball. So the big boys are left across the board. We're going to do offensive line tonight. Hopefully try to get these knocked out before I get to LA. And then we'll figure what the nightcap looks like next week. We'll still be doing it. Justin has volunteered to step in. I asked him if he wanted to step in on a BBP. He said he doesn't have that kind of time.
Can't say I blame him.
He said, look, 2 hours and 40 plus minutes last week. Like, I don't, my daughter, my infant does not sleep that long. I can't do it.
Those dishes don't wash themselves, Chad.
Right. So, but he's willing to step in for a nightcap or two if necessary. Then on what my week looks like in LA. We're about to find out what this place is like without me for a week. It's either going to be really good or really bad. You're in charge.
I know.
Oh, yeah, you're in charge. So if people have questions on the message board, you need to answer them.
Fantastic. They're all going to be wait till Chad gets back. Wait till Chad gets back. Chad comes back next week.
Chad will be back Sunday morning. Oh, boy. This is not going to be good. It's not going to be good. All right, let's get rolling. Offensive line. So this is really interesting, right? It's not talked about nearly like quarterback. It's not talked about nearly like defensive back. But there was a big change that happened on this coaching staff, right?
There certainly was. Mike Cummings coming in at offensive line coach. Definitely a big change here. Not only that, but you also have a new offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of change across the offensive, just how the offensive line is going to be coached in general.
So it's easy to look at this and say they return all 5 starters on the offensive line. That's putting Lorenz Metz in at guard in place of Vinny McConnell, who missed
quite a bit of time.
Good chunk of last season. Enough of a chunk that Lorenz Metz was selected as first team all conference at right guard.
Right.
But when you look at left to right, I think we're pretty confident that Jake Renfro is going to be playing center.
That's a pretty easy one.
I think we're pretty confident that James Tunstall is going to be at left tackle. He looked very good in the spring. Like, when you look at him now, he looks the part of high-level offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. Jeremy Cooper at left guard is the incumbent.
Sure.
But I think there will be challengers there.
Well, also, if you look at what Mike Cummings likes there, maybe he's a little undersized.
It might be. He's a guy with a lot of starts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of seniority there, a lot of experience.
Right.
I would expect when camp starts, he'll probably be the number one at left guard.
I would think.
But there's going to be a lot of people looking at that spot.
Going to be playing with your toys, right?
Well, where this gets interesting. I think Mike wants to get a look at Lorenz Metz back at right tackle.
He's a large human. And, I mean, you can't teach size, right?
Right.
Height anyway.
He has the body of a tackle.
He has the body of an NFL tackle.
Right. I think there's going to be some desire to find out, ultimately, once and for all, is this a guy we can use on the outside? If you feel like he's a right tackle, that means Dylan O'Quinn can move to what is probably his most natural position, back inside at guard.
Right.
Although I thought Dylan O'Quinn did an excellent job at right tackle last season.
When you don't hear very often, you're probably doing a good job on offensive line.
Yeah. Dylan O'Quinn was a left guard on his way up. Does that create some of that competition for Cooper? And if that's the case, then who goes in at right guard? Is there a scenario where maybe Jake Renfro, because of the hip issue, is moved to guard? Gavin Gerhardt had a really good spring at center.
Excellent spring.
As he got comfortable with the position. Last year was a little bit rough for him because he had never played center before. D'Artagnan Tinsley, who Brady Collins mentioned
on Monday. Yeah. He's had a good spring himself, and I'm very curious to see what he looks like just on the field at higher ground, especially if he's got a more refined body.
Right. We've also seen Joe Huber get a lot of starts or a lot of snaps at right guard. He's a redshirt sophomore from Dublin, Ohio. He spent most of the spring as the number one or number two guy at right guard. Mm-hmm. I wish I could say it's as simple as everybody wants to make it, that the 5 offensive linemen that played the most snaps last year will return and be the 5 offensive linemen in those spots, in those same exact spots, when we get to higher ground. I don't know that that's the case. It might be.
If you were returning Crook and if you were returning Denbrock, then yeah, I think that's an easy conversation to have.
Right.
But now that you have new eyes on it, you have Gaduli wanting to put his stamp on his offense, whatever that may look like. We already saw the offensive line coach change. I don't think it's quite as simple as cut and paste.
Then you have a couple other names. Cam Jones. I know they've been very happy with Cam Jones.
That's another guy Brady mentioned on Monday.
John Williams. I know they've been happy with his progression. So now you're starting to get this competition, and you've got a new coach that has a new philosophy, or at least has new ideas, and you got a new offensive coordinator.
You're also starting to see the best recruiting classes in Cincinnati's history start to get some years on their belt. And I think that that's also going to do nothing but create waves year after year where it's not as easy to just pencil everybody in as incumbent starters.
Absolutely. And I just think as we get closer and closer to higher ground, the question about this offensive line room becomes more relevant. Do I think there's a realistic chance that we go to higher ground and you're looking at Tunstall, Cooper, Renfro, Metz, O'Quinn? Yeah, like that's obviously still very possible.
Correct.
But from the conversations I've had throughout the spring, and then from spring all the way up to now, I just don't think it's as easy as saying this offensive line is 100% going to be intact the way that it was to end last season. And that kind of fascinating, kind of interesting, if you will.
Well, I mean, think about what this running game could look like with Corey Kiner. And if all of a sudden you have a bulldozer out there at right tackle in Lorenz Metz.
And that's, yeah.
Like,
or if you got Cam Jones,
another
at
big
right
guy.
tackle.
Right, another big guy. I mean,
able to move O'Quinn back inside. Like,
it certainly could look very interesting, and just what kind of pass protection you have for, whoever's taking the helm over for Dez, because the more time that you can give whatever quarterback lands back there, whether it's Prater scampering around or whether that's Ben Bryant sitting in the pocket, all of a sudden, that becomes huge for a team that, against Alabama in particular, the offensive line struggled.
Yeah, I tossed that out because Will Anderson is not human.
Right.
Like,
and I understand that it's Alabama, and that's what I'm comparing it to. But if you're trying to get that elusive New Year's Six bowl win, you potentially could be playing a team that has somebody out there that's along the skill set of a Will Anderson or close to. Close to. Not even close to. At least size, maybe.
I think he's going to win the Heisman.
I'm surprised he didn't last year.
He should have won it last year. I think he's going to win it this year. There are very few guys. It's what I always joke about when talking about scouting basketball, right? Mm-hmm. Look for the guys that don't look like anybody else. And if you do that and you're able to figure that out, you're going to be pretty good at evaluating basketball prospects.
We talked about that with Jalen Thompson just the other night.
Right.
When you have alien arms.
Right. Look for the guys that don't look like anybody else. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody that functionally, when the game is live, impacts things the way that dude did. So I can't hold it against that offensive line for not being able to block Will Anderson, because I don't think there's any line in college that can block that dude.
And that wasn't the point that I was necessarily trying to make. It was simply just the fact that they could.
No, I know. I know. I just am chiming back in on let's not bring his name up in this conversation.
just trying to say that, if we are trying to get that New Year's Six bowl win, we could be going against some fairly large defensive linemen. Yeah, and
like the kid from Georgia that Mets had trouble with last year when Hudson went out 2 years ago now, whatever you want to call it. Like, yeah, that was why that game was lost. It's because they lost contain on the edge. So I think they're in a really good spot. I think it's going to be.
It's actually going to be interesting to watch what happens at offensive line. When was the last time that we've actually been interested to see what's going on the offensive line? I think it's been.
Well, we've been interested for 3-4 years because it's been patchwork. Like Ron Crook, I know they've moved on. That guy deserves a shit ton of credit for the way he was able to piecemeal together the island of misfit toys that he had to work with.
Even the recruiting he did to bring in some fantastic transfers.
Yeah. So this is just the next progression of that. And right. Can Cincinnati finally get to that point where it's not the island of misfit toys? It's the island of, we got a bunch of dudes and let's figure out who the best five is.
Obviously, we'd love to see Cummings work his magic with a guy like Lorenz Metz. And all of a sudden you have your next NFL offensive lineman since Hudson.
Yeah, potentially. We'll see. And then how does it impact not having a Maije out there to test these guys every practice?
There's definitely something to be said for that. I mean,
if iron sharpens iron, we're going to find out like how strong the iron is on that defensive line. Because I think the defensive line is going to be really good, but I think they're going to be a lot different.
A lot more bull rush than.
Yeah, a lot more power than speed.
Yeah.
So what happens when you get a speed guy? Because you spend all your days of practice going against power guys.
Maybe you get blown
and
back.
Then you see a speed guy.
Somebody just blows right by you. Right.
Yeah. There's a lot more to that storyline than people are giving it credit for. Everybody's just saying all 5 offensive linemen return. Cincinnati's going to be fine at the offensive line.
That's easy.
I think it's a little more complicated. I think when we get to higher ground, it'll be really interesting to see who are those 5 guys that line up that first snap.
I think
and how telling is that going forward?
I think higher ground is literally there are stories all over.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just fascinating.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Right.
I'm really going to enjoy this higher ground. Like the different stuff every day that you're going to be able to focus on and get great content and storylines out of is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to wrap it up. He's Aaron Smith. I'm Chad Brendel. This is the Nightcap, brought to you by Galactic Fried Chicken, right here on BearcatJournal.com.